Dylan, and my lab is about calculating the spring constant of my Africanet sponge. Just a disclaimer, there will be not any coding in this, there's going to be only calculations. So in this lab, we're going to examine a system of a mass and a spring that is dropped. The spring is going to be the sponge, and the mass is going to be a carabiner. So the purpose of this lab is to calculate the spring constant of the spring given the masses of the spring and mass, and the initial and final length of the spring. We will use the concept of net forces and the formula for spring force to calculate the spring constant. We're also going to use the concept of static equilibrium later in the calculations as well. So in this experiment, we're going to label the system as the sponge and the carabiner, and so the surroundings being the earth. So the initial conditions are the masses, which are found using a scale, and the initial and final length of the sponge, measured with a tape measure. So the sponge is attached to a tripod that is fixed, while the carabiner is hooked onto the sponge on the other end and let go. At the initial and final states of the system is at rest, and we will use this concept of static equilibrium to perform the calculations later. So here's a clip of the experiment and the initial conditions listed. Excuse me. So from the free body diagram, we see that at the final state of the system, the force of tension in the sponge carabiner system is in static equilibrium with the weight of the system. And going through these calculations, we see that our K is going to be 6.295 newtons per meter. So what does this mean? So this experiment just proves that in an isolated system, equal and opposite forces can be in static equilibrium given that the system is motionless. So what if the relaxed length was shorter? If it was shorter, the spring constant would be larger. So if the denominator was smaller, that would mean that this would be a larger number as a whole. And so some possible errors could include the inaccurate measuring of the length of the sponge. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.